Insertion of resistance in the stator of induction motor decreases the starting torque. The starting torque of a three-phase induction motor can be increased by increasing slip, increasing current. The rotor of an induction motor runs at below synchronous speed. In a star-delta starter of an induction motor, applied voltage per stator phase is 77% of the line voltage. Slip ring motor is preferred over squirrel gauge induction motor where high starting torque is required. Reduced voltage starter can be used with squirrel gauge as well as slip ring induction motor. Squirrel gauge induction motor is not selected when higher starting torque is the main consideration. Less maintenance troubles are experienced in case of squirrel gauge induction motor. In a squirrel gauge motor, the induced EMF is slip times the standstill EMF induced in the rotor. The purpose of using short circuit gear is to short circuit the rotor at slip rings. Temperature of the stator winding of a three-phase induction motor is obtained by all of the above: resisting rise method, thermometer method, embedded temperature. For driving high inertial load, best type of induction motor suggested is slip ring type. Insertion of resistance in its rotor of induction motor to develop a given torque, rotor current remains same. Insertion of resistance in the rotor circuit reduces torque as well as maximum torque. An induction motor can run at synchronous speed when EMF is injected in the rotor circuit. The low power factor of induction motor is due to rotor leakage reactance, stator reactance, the reactive magnetizing current necessary to generate the magnetic flux, all of the above. In induction motor, percentage slips depends on copper losses in a motor. When there is the rotor resistance X to the rotor reactance at supply frequency and S the slip, then the condition for maximum torque under running condition will be R square is equal to S cross square, S x square. In case of double gauge induction motor, the inner gauge has high inductance, added low resistance. In an induction motor, if air gap is increased, the power factor will be low. The torque developed by a three-phase induction motor least depends on shaft diameter. Which motor is preferred for use in mines where explosive gases exist? Air motor. Lubricant used for ball bearing is usually grease. The circle diagram for which for an induction motor cannot be used to determine efficiency. Blocked rotor test on induction motor is used to find out all of the above. Leakage reactance, power factor on short circuit current under rated voltage. The complete circle diagram of induction motor can be drawn with the help of data found from no load test, blocked rotor test, stator resistance test, all of the above. In the squirrel cage induction motor, the rotor slots are usually given given slight skew to reduce the magnetic hum and locking tendency of the rotor. The torque of a rotor in an induction motor under running condition is maximum at the value of slip, which makes rotor reactance per phase equal to the resistance per phase. What will happen if the relative speed between rotating flux of stator and rotor of induction motor is zero? The rotor will not run. The starting torque of the slip ring induction motor can be increased by adding external resistance to the rotor. A 500 kW 3-phase 440 volt 50 Hz AC induction motor has a speed of 960 rpm. On full load, the machine has 6 poles. The slip of the machine will be 0.04. The power scale of a circle diagram of an induction motor can be found from short circuit test only. Charge of 4% of supply voltage to an induction motor will produce a change of approximately 16% in the rotor torque. The shape of the torque slip curve of an induction motor is a rectangular parabola. The Vfc of transformation ratio of an induction motor can be found by short circuit test only. In a three-phase induction motor, power factor at starting is low as compared to that while running. In three-phase induction motors, sometimes copper bars are placed deep in the rotor to improve starting torque. Which of the following data is required to draw the circle diagram for induction motor? Blocked rotor test, no load, and stator resistance. In case of three-phase induction motor, planking means interchanging two supply phases for quick stopping. In a three-phase induction motor, iron losses in the stator will be more than that in the rotor. Short circuit test on an induction motor can be used to determine windage losses. The starting torque of a three-phase squirrel cage induction motor is 1.5 times the full load torque. A three-phase slip ring motor has wound rotor. 5 horsepower, 50 horse, three-phase 440 volt induction motor are available for the following RPM, which motor will be the costliest? 730 RPM. A pump induction motor is switched onto a supply 30% lower than its rated voltage. The pump runs. What will eventually happen? It will get heated and subsequently get damaged. Which type of bearing is provided in small induction motor to support the rotor shaft? Ball bearings. The speed characteristics of an induction motor closely resemble the speed load characteristics of each of the following machine DC shunt motor. It is advisable to avoid line starting of induction motor and use starter because motor takes 5 to 7 times its full load current. If a three-phase supply is given to the stator and rotor is short-circuited, rotor will move in the same direction as the direction of field. As the load on an induction motor goes on increasing, its power factor goes on increasing up to full load and then it falls again. Slip ring motor is recommended where all above features are required. Speed control is required, frequent starting, stopping, and reversing is required. High starting torque is needed. In an induction motor, the relationship between stator motor slot and rotor slot is that slot stator slot are not exact multiple of rotor slots. Low voltage at motor terminals is due to any of the above: inadequate motor wiring, poorly regulated power supply. A three-phase induction motor delta connector is carrying too heavy load and one of its fuses blows out. Then the motor will stop and carry heavy current causing permanent damage to its winding. A three-phase induction motor stator delta connector is carrying full load and one of its fuses blows out. Then the motor will continue running burning its own phases. Size of a high-speed motor as compared to low-speed motor for the same horsepower will be smaller. Slip of an induction motor is negative when rotor speed is more than the synchronous speed of the field and are in the same direction. If an induction motor with certain ratio of rotor to stator slots run at 1 by 7 of the normal speed, the phenomenon will be termed as crawling. The clogging of an induction motor can be avoided by having heavy number of rotor slots more or less than the number of stator slots not equal. The power factor of an induction motor under no load condition will be closer to 0.2 lagging. The crawling in an induction motor is caused by harmonic developed in the motor. The speed of a squirrel cage induction motor can be controlled by all of the following except changing winding resistance. DOL direct online starting of induction motor is usually restricted to low horsepower motors. In a three-phase induction motor, the number of poles in the rotor winding is always equal to number of poles in stator. In three-phase squirrel cage induction motor, rotor conductors are short-circuited through end rings. The maximum torque in induction motor depends on frequency, rotor inductive reactance, square of supply voltage, all of the above. An induction motor is self-starting with low torque. If any two phases for induction motor are interchanged, the motor will run in the reverse direction. Rotary state control method of speed control is used for slip ring induction motor, for which motor the speed can be controlled from the rotor slide slip ring induction motor. In the circle diagram for induction motor, the diameter of the circle represents rotor current. Stepless speed control of induction motor is possible by which of the following method: changing the number of poles. It is advisable to avoid line starting of induction motor and use starter because motor takes 5 to 7 times its full load current. When the equivalent circuit diagram of double squirrel cage induction motor is constructed, the two gauges can be considered in parallel. The torque developed in the gauge induction motor with auto starter is K2 cross torque with direct switching. The auto starter using three auto transformer can be used to start gauge induction motor of the following type: A and B both start connected only, delta connected only. The crawling in the induction motor is caused by the harmonics developed in the motor. Which of the following method is easily applicable to control the speed of the squirrel cage induction motor by changing the number of stator poles? An induction motor is identical to a synchronous motor. The inject EMF in the rotor of induction motor must have the same frequency as the slip frequency. In case of induction motor, the torque is direct proportional to slip. The good power factor of induction motor can be achieved if the average flux density in the air gap is small. A double squirrel cage induction motor has two parallel windings in rotor. Star delta starting of motor is not possible in case of single phase motor. The starting torque of a squirrel cage induction motor is low. If ns is the synchronous speed and s the slip, the actual running speed of an induction motor will be L minus S ns into ns. L dash S bracket bar into ns. Slip rings are usually made of phosphor bronze. In case the air gap in induction motor is increased, the power factor will decrease. In squirrel cage induction motor, the rotor slots are usually given slide skew in order to reduce magnetic hum. In medium-sized induction motor, the slip is generally around 4%. Which of the following component is usually fabricated out of silicon steel? Stator core. An induction motor with 1000 rpm speed will have 6 poles. The term cogging is associated with induction motor. The number of slip rings on a squirrel cage induction motor is usually known. The efficiency of induction motor can be expected to be nearly 80 to 90%. A three-phase 440 volt 50 Hz induction motor has 4% slip. The frequency of rotor EMF will be 2 Hz. In case the air gap in an induction motor is increased, the power factor will decrease. In an induction motor, no loads, the slip is generally less than 1%. The shaft of an induction motor is made of carbon steel. The torque of an induction motor is directly proportional to slip. The frame of an induction motor is usually made of cast iron.